What's going on, guys, and welcome to episode 563 of #AskGSM, here today for Wednesday, September 11th, 2024. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Hope you guys are doing well and having a great week so far. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the #AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews. Drop the comment on the post that I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. So let's get right into it here. Micah does it from YouTube. Their first question was, should WWE take the title off of Cody Rhodes and give it to Randy Orton, allowing Rhodes to chase the championship again and maybe win it at the Royal Rumble? You know, I've been saying that. I would agree. Honestly, I would have no issue with that whatsoever. And not only would I have no issue with it, I would probably be in favor of it. I don't think they're going to do that. I don't think they're going to take the championship off of Cody at all until he inevitably faces The Rock, probably at WrestleMania. But in that case, I think Cody could still lose the championship, albeit briefly, to kind of switch up the main event scene, switch up, kind of freshen up Cody's run, have him chase for a little while. Not every champion has to be undefeated or, be champion consistently for a year straight. Even Drew McIntyre, when he was champion recently, this is not, something they haven't done in years. They did that with Drew McIntyre back in late 2020. He lost the championship, coincidentally enough, to Randy Orton, actually, in the fall of 2020. And then Drew beat him for the belt and got it right back 3 weeks later on Raw. So they switched up the scene. Again, they had a million matches, it felt like, by that point, but they worked well together. It wasn't an issue, and it was, they interrupted Drew's run, but they ended up having a series of great matches, so it was kind of hard to complain. I feel like with Cody and Randy, it could be something similar. Either Randy or Kevin Owens. I'm kind of more reserved to the idea of it being Randy going heel and beating Cody for the belt as opposed to KO. KO would be great. If KO gets the belt back at some point, and I hope he does, I would want it more to be an extended run and not just a 3-week run. That would be shitty. With Orton, it doesn't matter. I mean, with Orton, he's not breaking a record with that run. Like when John Cena won his 16th World Championship, they literally just did that to pad his number. He lost the belt literally 2 or 3 weeks later at Elimination Chamber. With Orton, this is not the record-setting run or the 16th title, the record-tying title run. He would merely be getting one step closer to 15. So I would have no issue if he had won the belt, lost it a short while later. I don't think they're going to do that, but I would be in full favor of them doing that, though. Your second question, if WWE brought in women's mid-card titles to Raw and SmackDown, who would be your first women's champions? You could also bring up someone from NXT. That's a great question. Without even looking at the roster, a few names came to mind. For Raw, the first name that came to mind was Lyra Valkyria. She's kind of stuck in that spot right now where she's feuding with the fucking Pure Fusion Collective like anyone gives a shit. She wasn't on Raw for a little while before that. She's clearly not going to win the Women's World Championship anytime soon. I think Rhea Ripley's getting that belt back. And if Rhea Ripley's getting that belt back, Lyra Valkyria certainly is not beating her for it. So until Becky comes back and they can maybe do the tag team thing, I just don't see Lyra coming back anytime soon. Becky coming back anytime soon, or Lyra really doing anything along those lines until Becky were to come back and be in the tag team division. I mean, I guess she could team with Natalya, but again, who gives a shit? The benefit that what great gain did Tegan Nox get from teaming with Natalya for a couple of months, and she hasn't even really been on the fucking show since the spring, since being drafted to SmackDown. But I would go Lyra Valkyria. I think she'd be the perfect fit for a mid-card women's champion on Raw. And then I don't know if I would do another babyface on SmackDown. I would probably start out with one women's mid-card belt, for starters. That's defended on both brands. But if they want to go one each brand, Lyra Valkyria on Raw. I wrote down Michin originally, because I don't think she'll ever win the main championship on SmackDown. I mean, she could. I think Michin's great. Mia Yim, whatever you want to call her. I think she's very talented. I just do not see her becoming WWE Women's Champion with the talent that they have on Raw and SmackDown at this current juncture, but I could certainly see her as a mid-card champion. My point was, I don't know if they put the belt on two baby faces, one mid-card women's champion on Raw and another on SmackDown, and both are baby faces. If you want one heel and one baby face to kind of, for the sake of switching it up, Chelsea Green is who I would go with. She's another one where I never really see her probably ever winning the WWE Women's Championship, but as a mid-card champion, that would be the perfect spot for her. I know she just lost to Julia in a matter of minutes on NXT, but she plays her role really, really well. She's good in the ring. She's entertaining. She's over at this point. Chelsea Green would be my pick. Your third question, do you think WWE will split up The New Day next Monday on Raw for their 10-year anniversary? I think it would be intriguing. I'm still leaning towards them doing something with that whole Odyssey Jones teasing tension angle. I mean, when Odyssey Jones got fired, we talked about the New Day thing last week and how they kind of handle it. It really shouldn't affect the storyline. They should go farther and go forward, teasing dissension between Woods and Kofi. I would not stop it here just because Odyssey Jones got fired. Now the question is, like you mentioned, like they even mentioned on Raw, the 10-year anniversary of the New Day is in November. So do they really break them up before the 10-year mark? I think the answer is no. If you're going to do the split, have them get to 10 years and either do it on that show or like soon after. That would really up the shock factor. Now, they could be tag team champions for 2 months. The New Day have not been tag team champions in quite a long time. I know they were NXT tag team champions in late 2022, early 2023. So a little less than 2 years ago. But that was NXT. And I think they brought those belts actually to SmackDown for a brief period because they were only champions for like a month or two. Before that, though, you would have to go back maybe, I think they're early 2021. I think they were last Raw Tag Team Champions on the main roster going into WrestleMania. Again, it was a very brief run. They only put the belts on them so they could lose it to AJ Styles and Omos at WrestleMania. I don't think they've been Tag Team Champions on the main roster since then. So, honestly, I would put the belts on them next week. Balor and McDonough have done jack shit with those championships since they won them 3 months ago. I didn't hate the idea of the Judgment Day getting more gold at that point, but what have they done with those belts? The division has been non-existent. If you thought it was in a bad spot with the fucking Awesome Truth as champions, at least they had a few successful title defenses. Almost every other week, actually. They were defending fighting champions. The Judgment Day are on TV every week, but they have not defended those World Tag Team titles in like 3 fucking months. That is ridiculous. So honestly, I would have them lose it next week to the New Day. The New Day can hold on to it for a couple of months. And then maybe we can hopefully go forward with the whole tease and tension thing and split them up or have Woods go a separate way or whatever. Go his own way, and then they can get back together at some point. Maybe Big E comes in to serve as mediator, I don't know, without getting physical. That's what I would do. So I don't think the split happens next week. I think they win the belts, actually. I'm going to go the opposite way and say they become the champions. And then maybe we see after they drop the belts, them go back to the breakup angle potentially, like in November, after they surpass the 10-year anniversary mark. Chris W. from YouTube, his first question was, he says, "Hello, Graham. Hope you had a superb weekend, enjoyed All Out, and are having a fantastic week. Last week, Julia debuted as a full-time member of the NXT roster at No Mercy to a warm reception, then re-debuting on Tuesday, which I felt was kind of weird since I think they should have just had her debut on the show after Sunday instead of doing the same formula of someone debuting and stepping up to the heel champion. At least they had her cut a small promo challenging her on the debut episode of CW, which was my prediction. Now Shawn Michaels is booking Julia against Chelsea Green. Do you think this is a good or bad idea on Shawn's part? Do you think Thunder Rosa is right in that they haven't done anything like a video package or vignette to build up Julia? And should they have waited until NXT after No Mercy to debut her? Obviously, you sent this in after NXT last night because they put together a quick video package before she debuted on the show. Before she had her in-ring debut on NXT last night, they put together a quick video package recapping her debut in No Mercy, her debut at No Mercy, her quick appearance in the crowd at Stand and Deliver in April and why that was a big deal. And they also showed clips of some of her matches in Japan. I believe Stardom, it might have been another promotion, probably Marigold, I'm not sure. But they showed footage of her wrestling and doing her thing and why she's a big star. So everything that Thunder Rosa was complaining about with the whole video package thing, yeah, some people would benefit from that sort of thing. Honestly, yeah, most people I would say do a video package for, because not everyone's going to know Julia. But to be perfectly honest with you, I know nothing about Julia as far as her in-ring work either. I've just heard the name. A lot of people have heard the name. Fucking Roxanne Perez has mentioned this woman on the show before in the last couple of months. So in WWE canon, NXT canon, she has been established as a potential player in that division, as someone coming in. I would say the exact same thing about Stephanie Vaquer when she comes in at some point. They've also mentioned her on the show. She's been at WWE house shows. That hasn't been shown on WWE TV, I don't think. They may have shown the footage of her getting signed a couple of months ago. But when she's ready to come in, that'll be cool to see too. They could put together a quick video package of her work. Obviously not the match with Mercedes Monet at Forbidden Door, but everything else though in Japan, CMLL, New Japan, maybe, I don't know. No, I thought the Julia debut was perfect. For someone like Julia, like at NXT specifically, of having her just come out and step up to the champion, first of all, most people in that crowd probably already knew who Julia was. I have never even seen, I think I've seen at least one match of hers. I keep saying I've never seen her work. I think I've seen one match of Julia's in full, and that was like a TNA show like a year or so ago. Beyond that, I don't think I've seen many matches of hers. But that being said, though, she comes out at No Mercy, and even on NXT more so, actually, and she has, and I hate to sound cliche, she has that fucking aura about her. She has that star it factor. That was evident at No Mercy, that was evident last week, and that was evident on Tuesday night. All three instances, she comes out, and you know nothing about this woman. She looks like a star. The entrance is awesome. It doesn't even matter. And we'll see what she could do in the ring. And she wrestled last night. I like the idea of having her make her in-ring debut last night. It stacked that, WWE week on USA show even more than it already was. I thought NXT last night was great. They really stacked the show. Felt like a fun 2 hours. No filler, a lot less filler, if any filler. A lot less than usual anyway. And it kind of gave people a preview of what to expect. Now, I mean, they could have saved her first match for the CW, but that's not for another month, or at least another 3 weeks. They have to kill time until then. They can't just have her out there cutting promos. We heard from her briefly backstage at the end of the show last night. And her English actually isn't terrible. It's actually pretty decent. So it's not like they're going to go in there, though, and have like this dueling promo battle. They'll probably have a contract signing. I know they're doing one next week, actually, with Ethan Page and Trick Williams. But there's only so much they can do before the CW debut, probably before Julia becomes champion. I imagine they'll resume the rivalry going into Halloween Havoc, and Roxanne will lose there too. But at least at that point, it's a different dynamic. Roxanne's not the champion. She can come out and like act all crazy or whatever. That can't happen until after she loses the championship. Until then, it's kind of the same Roxanne we've been getting as of late, which is fine because I think she's been excelling in her heel role. But I think having Julia wrestle in the meantime, beating a main roster talent, even though she's a lower level, star, I think Chelsea's very good. I said that earlier, as a character and stuff like that. Having Julia beat her was the right call. It could have been and should have been shorter, arguably, in my opinion. It was like 6-7 minutes, but still, at least it was a decisive showcase for Julia. Went over decisively. Not exactly in dominant fashion. Chelsea did get a fair amount of offense in, but it was a good match. And Julia hits hard, and that was pretty evident in that outing. So I have no issue whatsoever, honestly, with how they've booked her and portrayed Julia so far in NXT. Your second question, for all the success and for all that he's done for pro wrestling, it never astounds me how much of a dishonest turd of a human being Hulk Hogan is. It seems that no matter what he says, nobody could ever take it seriously. From saying he was at Wembley in '92 with the kid who has cancer, to him stating that he was basically going to be cast in a John Wayne-like Western. It seems he is incapable of telling the truth. Why is Hulk Hogan such a lying idiot? So when I saw your question was about Hogan, I thought you were going to reference the obvious of what he said a couple days ago. I thought this was going to be about that fucking atrocious comment, probably for every lie that he's ever told, and there's a lot of them. You touched upon 2 of them there. Not that this is a lie, this is just a stupid thing to say. That Chris Benoit comment, where I guess Logan Paul, I haven't watched the clip, I just saw the transcript and people reading off the transcript and whatever. And I saw a brief part of it where he mentioned Benoit. I didn't see the whole context with what Logan Paul asked him. But you don't even really need to, honestly, because what Hogan said is so absurdly false and just so fucking ridiculous, and honestly even so disrespectful as well. He says a lot of dumb shit. I mean, I can't believe that he would say something like that given what came out of his mouth when that video leaked a decade ago. I mean, the video is from well before that. But I mean, listen, he has said worse, which is honestly kind of shocking because he's just a flat-out racist. But that Chris Benoit comment in 2024, what the fuck are we doing here? When he was like, oh, if people are capable of forgiving Chris Benoit, then I can... he was kind of relating it to himself. First of all, the 2 things of what Hogan did and what Benoit did are not comparable. Still equally disgusting, but the big takeaway was, he literally said, the people will still love Benoit, then people will still love me for all of my faults and whatever. First of all, Hogan has a lot of fucking haters, and rightfully so, justifiably so. Second of all, who are these people that are forgiving and still loving Chris Benoit? If they love his work, then sure, but I would argue, and a lot of people won't even say that. They just won't even mention the guy or just say fuck him or whatever. And Benoit obviously did have a lot of great matches back in the day. But who are these people that are loving Chris Benoit? Maybe not even loving his matches, but loving Chris Benoit. Who the fuck is he talking about? If there are those people out there, and I'm sure there are, because there are still people that occasionally ask, not even really just me necessarily, but just in general, it has been toned down a lot in recent years, but even years ago, I would see it quite a bit. Can Chris Benoit go into the WWE Hall of Fame? The answer is no. He will never and should never go into the WWE Hall of Fame, or any Hall of Fame for that matter, for what he did in the final few days of his life. So again, if anyone is saying that they still love Benoit or that he belongs in the Hall of Fame, it is the vast minority. I don't know what the fuck Hogan was thinking when he said that. I don't know really what he's thinking when he says any of this shit. Because I'm sure he says it so much he thinks it's the truth. But I just need someone to do an interview with this guy and write down all this, everything you just said, Chris, but also just in general, every lie that this man has told, especially the bigger ones, and fact check him and see what he says. Has anyone done that yet? He's done a fair amount of interviews and, he tells the same stories every fucking time. I don't expect Logan Paul to do that, but even Chris Van Vliet when he talked to him a year or two ago about, I don't know if it was his beat shop, he told more lies on that podcast too, and I'm not sure. I hadn't watched the interview, so maybe I'm not sure. I don't know if he did. I don't know. But I'm not sure Chris Van Vliet had clapped back and said, yeah, that doesn't sound accurate. You said this, and this before. Can you clarify what you meant by that? Do you retroactively take that stuff back because it's just not true? How does the Wembley 92 thing even happen when you're not even on the fucking show? You know what I mean? And it's hard to interview the guy without coming across he needs to talk about, because he never really apologized for what he said years ago. That's kind of the big thing. Wanting to interview Hogan, it would be awesome. I almost had the opportunity actually to interview him a couple years ago in WWE during COVID. Had that old school Raw Legends night, whatever it was, back in early 2021. And we had to pass on it. It would be cool. It would be cool to say that I interviewed a wrestling legend like Hogan, but we couldn't do the interview. That's one of the few ones we had to say no to, for especially for this reason. Ironically, it was him and Flair. Not for this one instance. Flair was a year or two later, and we had to say no for the exact same reason. Unless he's going to come out and discuss the issues against him, because he's a hot topic and not for the right reasons. He's very controversial, and again, he says a lot of dumb shit, but he doesn't own up to it or apologize. That would be one thing. He doesn't even do that. So if he's not going to want to talk about it, then we can't do the interview. And he's not going to want to talk about it because it's in the past. He's moved on. Has he really moved on though? Because again, he never really apologized for it. And then a small part of you might think, well, maybe he's not. Maybe he just says dumb shit. Maybe he's owned up to his mistakes. Maybe he was racist. Maybe he's not anymore. And then he goes out there and says that comment about Kamala Harris a couple of weeks ago. I won't repeat it here. You can go and find it. But it's bro, what the fuck are you doing? Maybe he just thinks it's funny, which is still equally bad to be saying that shit publicly. Or he probably just really is racist, I'm sure. But still, it's dude. I mean, I guess people who are that way don't see any issue with saying that stuff, especially publicly. I don't know, but it's you can't, it's very hard for someone like me that had grown up, not even being a wrestling fan, but being a Hogan fan before I was ever a wrestling fan. It's very hard for me to stay a fan of Hulk Hogan. Want to like the guy when he says dumb shit like that. The lies are one thing, the other disgusting crap is a whole other thing with the Benoit shit, the racist stuff. It's just, it's pretty bad to ever support Hulk Hogan at this point. He makes it incredibly difficult. Your next question, though he is now considered one of the WWE GOATs, there was a good amount of heat from the fans when it came to the push of John Cena. When he originally won the belt, despite the match at WrestleMania 21 being a slog, he was welcomed with open arms as the future of the company. By August of that year, he was starting to get lesser cheers and more hostility from the fan base who saw him as Vince's boy or Super Cena, and the crowd erupted when Edge stole the title from him at New Year's Revolution. Edge, however, only had it for a few weeks before dropping it to Cena again at the Royal Rumble, where he was made to look like a chump. By WrestleMania 22, Chicago was booing him out of the building, both at the Hall of Fame ceremony and at the actual WrestleMania event. Throughout the rest of the year, he was loudly booed everywhere he went, and it would be that way for the next 7 years. Do you feel Vince and the WWE went all in on Cena too hard, too soon? How would you have booked him on his first year as the face of the company? Do you agree that the hate was justified or not? And what do you make or what do you think made the fans all of a sudden truly respect him now that he's a part-timer and about to go on his final tour? I mean, that's kind of the case. You asked a lot of questions there. I'll see what I can do to kind of break it down. Were the boos for John Cena justified for a majority of his run? The answer is yes. Because you go back and watch a John Cena promo from that time period of what you're talking about, 05, 06, 07. Honestly, he followed very much the same formula at that point that he did years later. It was very much the same thing. People kind of grew to respect Cena in the years that followed because I feel like a criticism of Cena early on was that, oh, this guy can't wrestle. I think he shut that shit down in the years that followed, in the matches with Michaels, the matches with CM Punk, Daniel Bryan, even other like big matches, like against guys that were not like technically sound. Like Umaga was not in there having 5-star classics, but he and him had amazing chemistry. Even like the bigger matches with the great Khali were actually not bad. Like the Last Man Standing match or whatever the fuck they had back in 07 was really not bad. Like the matches he had with Triple H, some of which were kind of boring, but overall were very good. The matches with Batista, like they called them a lot later though, a term coined by JBL. They called him Big Match John for a reason. Whenever the lights were on bright, John Cena would deliver. He has had countless classics over the course of his career, whether they were mat classics or not, or just classics for the sake of being big matches. Like Hogan and Warrior, Cena was very similar in that respect to like Hogan, and probably, honestly, even better than Hogan in some respects. Hogan was very limited with what he could do in WWE. Hogan did more, we just talked about Hogan a moment ago. But Hogan was doing some shit that WWE fans never saw in Japan, and we never really saw that in WWE. Cena never really had the chance to kind of expand that skill set. I mean, he did get better in the ring as time went on, but like we saw more of John Cena in those big matches than I think we ever did see of Hulk Hogan. Because yeah, Hulk Hogan was on top in WWE for like a decade plus or whatever, but he wasn't on television every single week. There weren't pay-per-views every single month. John Cena was wrestling on every pay-per-view, every Raw. He got hurt, but he wouldn't be out for that long. And then he was constantly winning whatever mattered most, and there were a lot of people that could have gotten over during those periods that they would just have Cena steamroll right through. And Cena has said, oh yeah, I didn't have any say over it. I mean, that's not what Edge and Jericho said about SummerSlam 2010 when he single-handedly destroyed the Nexus, and then he kind of, made up for it after the fact by saying, well, we probably shouldn't have done that. Well, yeah, no shit. You shouldn't have done that. But like there were a lot of people during those years that they just had him steamroll right through, that were getting over, like even he's a piece of shit now, but like Del Rio back in 2011, they had a real opportunity to make that guy into a main event star. He won the WWE Championship with the Money in the Bank cash-in. Cena turned around and beat him for the belt literally within like a fucking month and tapped him out. And yeah, Del Rio got the belt back like 2 weeks later, but it didn't matter. The guy was already cemented, already solidified as a loser. There was him. Umaga never really got beyond a certain level, and you can argue that he should have never really been a world champion anyway. But after Umaga ran into the roadblock that was John Cena, never got beyond a certain level. Edge was thankfully able to get out of that. He also had the Del Rio treatment where he cashed in on Cena, became champion, lost it soon after. He did kind of meander in the mid-card for a little while there in 07 before jumping to SmackDown, and that really salvaged his career as a main event star, thankfully, away from John Cena. But there's just so many people. I mean, The Miz, again, he's another guy I don't know would have been a perennial main eventer, but as soon as his run was over, he was right back to the mid-card, and John Cena was the one who ended his run. 2010, the Nexus. 09, I don't really know. He faced many like up-and-comers in 09. 08, kind of the same thing. I'm sure there's a lot of people you can point to, some of the stars that I mentioned. But yeah, he really wasn't switching it up. As far as his character, it was stagnant. But it was working, though. As they went to the PG era in 08, they weren't going to turn him heel then. The closest they came, as Cena has said before on Jericho's podcast years ago, was during the Rock feud. And that would have been fascinating, because I think a lot of people were hoping for it. I remember hoping for it back at that period. and they didn't do it. They got cold feet, and he was still stagnant in the years that followed. Like, remember 2012 when they told that whole story that, oh, he had this bad down year before beating The Rock for the belt in 2013 at WrestleMania? Like, he did win, actually, a fair amount of big matches. He did lose a fair amount of matches, too, to, like, Punk and people like that. He lost to fucking John Laurinaitis, but he was still headlining, though. Like, what was the point of having Cena and John Laurinaitis headline Over the Limit in 2012? He ended up avenging that loss a little while later when he faced Big Show, or I think he was in a steel cage match, a feat that we'd already seen a million times before, remember. But, like, beating Brock, like, that was stupid, too. People weren't happy about that. Again, rightfully so in 2012. That was very dumb. So, yeah, I think the boosts for Cena were justified. I don't think WWE made a mistake by going with Cena as the guy. Because especially more than anything he was doing on the show, because he really came into that role as, like, the face of the franchise pretty quickly. I think more so than any of that, he was the ultimate employee. He would do anything they asked him to do. He was perfect for charity stuff. He could connect with the audience regardless of whether you liked him or hated him. He could do all the Make-A-Wish stuff. He's very likable, very good with media. He's not going to go out there and embarrass the company. There are people that are more dynamic, that would have been, more exciting as a main eventer that we've gotten even in recent years. But a lot of those people are not built the same way that John Cena is. And also not having a family and not really taking that into... I mean, he was married a couple times, obviously, or almost married to Nikki Bella, and he's married again now, whatever. But, like, he wasn't going to say, oh, I'm going to take this day off to go be with my kids. Like, he got off, he took time off sometimes for getting injured, but he would never be like, oh, yeah, I'm going to go take this personal day. The man was just a fucking machine. He was the ultimate WWE superstar, the ultimate WWE main eventer. So they definitely went with the right guy in that respect, because it wasn't like a Hogan issue where he would... threaten to walk out or quit. You never really had to worry about Cena, like, his contract coming due and he's going to negotiate with TNA, brother. Like, that was never going to happen. Hogan had issues. Warrior had issues. Macho Man had issues. Everyone had issues. And they also got Cena in there young enough where he could be there for his prime years. Like, even Batista was great, but Batista, they brought him in as a main eventer. He was a lot later on in his career. He got a number of years as a main event star, but he didn't have the same longevity as Cena, because Cena, he ended up doing movies too, but a lot later, though, because he was a lot younger than Dave. So, you asked me a lot of questions there, but you said, did they go all in on him too soon? They did. He did have a gradual build-up from 02 to 05. He was United States champion. It was just that the aftermath of when he was the world champion, he was constantly in the main event. Like, some people, you got to move away from the main event at some point. You can't be a perennial player in the main events and then do nothing else but be in the world title picture. From like 05 through 06, he was in the championship picture the entire time. 05, from Mania onward, he was in the championship picture the entire time. 07, he was world champion the entire year. 08, he was not. He failed to get the belt back. He ended up winning back the World Heavyweight Championship, or winning the World Heavyweight Championship for the first time in his career, later on that year. From that point forward, he was in the world title picture for a while through Mania. He was out of it, got back into it for the summer with Orton. He was champion in the title picture for the remainder of 2009, most of 2010, even when doing the Nexus stuff. Like, he was constantly in the title picture, constantly. In 2012, even when he wasn't, he was still headlining, and he wasn't really developing his character. Like, if they really wanted to go all in with Rock beating him and telling this story of Cena experiencing a downward spiral, they could and should have turned him heel, but they didn't. So, people respect him now because Cena is great. He also got better, but listen, absence makes the heart grow fonder. Cena has not been around regularly in a long time. So the longer he was gone, this was the case even in 2016. Like, I was starting to come into my own, and also the US Open stuff actually really, really helped. He was taking time off even then, in the middle of that US title run and after it was over and shit like that. But, like, he was on another fucking level with the shit that he was doing over the course of that year as United States champion. That was probably Cena's best year ever in terms of, like, the work that he was doing as a character, promo-wise, but specifically in the ring. And I think people kind of grew to respect him after that. And then he would disappear for a while and come back. And again, it was easy to root for him again. He would still do, like, the John Cena sucks chants because it was fun. But I don't think anyone truly thought that Cena sucked in 2016 and onward. He's obviously not in his prime anymore. You could say that he's washed or whatever. But he's just, for a lot of people, it's also nostalgia because he's not really around anymore. And the people like me that grew up on Cena, I'm not going to sit there crying when he retires, but there's a big portion of today's audience that was not watching when he was getting booed, even in 05, 06, 07. A lot of people started watching in the last couple of years, knowing him as the big-time attraction that he's portrayed to be. Don't really know why he would have been booed 17 years ago, 16, 20 years ago, whatever it was. And I've also seen him in big movies, and he's like The Rock where he comes back, and it's like, oh yeah, he's a big movie star. Now, Rock got booed when he came back because of the whole Cody thing. Cena's not coming back, hopefully, fingers crossed, taking a spot from anyone. The Rock thing was different this past year, but normally Rock would come back, get a massive reaction because everyone loves The Rock, and they know him from the movies, and just a likable guy. Cena, same thing. But he's also just, when you think of WWE in the past 15 years, 16, 17 years, you think of Cena. So it's not like a fake thing where people like all of a sudden said, oh yeah, I like him now. It is a matter of respect. Like, you know that he's winding down, and even some people that you don't like, and I'm not saying Hogan, but like I'm not like legitimately like I don't know if like a lot of people dislike Cena as a person. It was a lot of like the character stuff. Like, I don't know how much of a piece of shit he was behind the scenes. We've heard stories about him burying people, stuff like that. But, like, as far as some of the stuff that, like, Hogan's been accused of and people like that, he doesn't really have a lot of that going for him. Thankfully, not a lot of controversies to his name. So, when you get over the character stuff and he's not burying people, quote-unquote, anymore, then it's easy to root for him again. So, there's a lot that goes into it. And, again, absence really does make the heart grow fonder. I think that's the top takeaway there. Your last question here. How perfect of a prick was Gunther on Raw towards Bret Hart, saying that Goldberg was his hero, or his favorite wrestler, whatever. That was fucking awesome. I actually did not hear it the first time, and I think I was talking or something to Alexis, I don't know. We were talking or something, so I didn't hear it. So then I was going through Twitter after the fact, and I saw that they tweeted it out, and I'm like, holy shit, this is incredible. So I listened to it a couple times. That is so, because I even joked while we were watching it, like it'd be funny if Gunther just got on the mic and was like, oh yeah, my favorite wrestler is Goldberg. But he legitimately said that, and I just had no idea until I saw it on Twitter. Yeah, that was really fucking funny. Gunther was great in that segment. Cool to see Bret Hart, Sami Zayn playing his role well. Really strong segment on Monday, I thought. Christopher L., same Chris, obviously. And great to have Chris back, by the way. He wasn't around last week. He sent me a message, which you don't have to do, but I appreciate you doing that. Chris said that didn't have any questions last week, but he was back this week. And he also said, I think, did you say your nephew or your cousin? I forgot what you said. But you mentioned a family member was having kids. I think it was your cousin, I believe. I don't remember exactly. But you said they were your brother, maybe. They just announced they were having children that are on the way, so congrats to you on that. That's awesome. But glad to get Chris back in the fold here this week with some great questions, specifically that Cena one. That was a really good question. But for your Facebook questions now, you said, I was listening to Wrestling Soup the other day and listened to a very funny video of them bashing Mercedes Monet's interview before All In. To be honest, I don't know whether she was in character or simply being legitimate, and very much who Mercedes Varnado really is. Either way, hearing what she said in the interview made her not only look bad, but sound like a deeply conceited, self-absorbed, and self-loving megalomaniac. What do you think? Is she just playing her character, or do you think this is really how she feels, and does this article paint her in a bad light? I don't know what interview you're talking about. I'm going to go out of my way to watch it or read it after we're done here at some point today. I will just speak to you from my own experience, and I've had a lot of experience dealing and talking, and I'm not friends with her, so that I can't say, and I'm not going to sit here and say, oh yeah, I know her personally. I don't. But I've interviewed Sasha Mercedes a couple different times over the years, and not only that, I've never met her in person, actually, and I've mentioned this before. My younger brother, who works on movies and stuff like that, actually got assigned to a project a few years ago, and I was the one who broke the news on Twitter, and I actually got in trouble for that because I shouldn't have said anything before they announced it. They ended up announcing it on Twitter like about a month or so later, but I screwed the pooch and said it ahead of time. I didn't think it would blow up, but it did. That Mercedes was going to be in a movie, and this was during, I think she was still in WWE technically. I mean, she had walked out in May, but she hadn't technically officially left WWE yet. But anyway, so she was in a movie with my brother, and my brother actually closely worked with her because he was working on wardrobe. So he actually, I'm not saying he dressed her every day, but like he did have to help her, like put her like belt on or something. She was like a henchwoman in that movie. She had a gun and whatever. He had to help her put the holster on and stuff like that. So he dealt with her and whatever. And yes, that was pretty much the extent of it. And he talked to her a little bit. He actually said, and I've never really been a big Sasha fan. I think Sasha's excellent. I will sit here and give her flowers. I've never been the biggest Sasha fan, at least not in the last 10 years. She just gives off big bitch energy to me, but she also probably plays her character very well. So I don't really know where the line is drawn. He had said on set that she was very nice. And again, that's just one person's perspective, experience, whatever. He said that she wasn't great in the movie. Her acting skills left a lot to be desired, and if you watched the movie, you would see why. The movie was fucking awful. She was not great, and she has not been in any movies since, or at least not to our knowledge. Maybe she's filming something that we're not aware of. I don't know. But as of right now, she's not been in any more movies. But he said as a person, she was nice. In my own experience, I've never really loved interviewing Sasha. I talked to her twice when she was in WWE. The first time before I talked to her, and this has never happened before, the PR guy actually hit me up ahead of time, because usually they call you or whatever, and that's how the interview gets set up, the day of the interview. He had texted me, or actually called me, 20 minutes before we were supposed to start the interview, and I thought he was going to say it was canceled. He just wanted to tell me, he goes, listen, Sasha, he didn't say she could be a bitch. Obviously, they would never say that. But she was he had said, she can kind of be rough on some interviewers, especially because she's constantly in character. At least at that point, she still does it now, what you're saying. I haven't seen the video. She's constantly in character, so it can really be tough to get an interview out of her, and she can kind of give people a hard time. And he goes, you should be fine, you're good with the talent, you should be fine. And we ended up having a good interview. The second time I talked to her, I accidentally, and the interview's up here on the channel if you want to go find it, I accidentally made the mistake of outwardly just saying that she was in The Mandalorian Season 3. By that point, she was in 2. It had not yet been announced that she was in 3. I thought I read, legitimately, genuinely thought for a fact it was announced that she was in it. But she wasn't. By that point, she was not announced for the show. And obviously, she's not going to say, oh, yeah, I'm in it. But I said, oh, yeah, how was it, filming the 3rd season? She goes, I'm not actually in that, thank you. And, the way that she kind of came across, me saying it now isn't really doing it justice. She came across like a bitch, when she was talking about it. But at the same time, she doesn't want to, spoil the news that she's in the season. So I get it. And she also, it wasn't with me. I think it was with Ariel Helwani, actually. I joke about this with RJ all the time. He did an interview with her, and he has gone on record and saying it was one of his least favorite interviews that he's ever done. Because he asked her, oh, what are some of your favorite Survivor Series matches? And she was so in character, as a babyface, mind you. And she was like, oh, yeah, anything involving me. So me and Asuka from last year. And he's like, well, aside from that, what's some of your other favorite Survivor Series matches? And she said, well, me and Asuka from last year. And it's not like she's not a wrestling fan. Sasha knows her shit. It's not like she's not aware of the product or doesn't watch the product. She fucking is a wrestling fan. So she obviously has other answers, but she doesn't want to, not be in character. So it's really tough to talk to her. And again, I don't know if she does that now as Mercedes Monet. I'm not sure. But she has come across as very, comes across as, she's a heel now. So I think, I don't know. I always got the idea, or rather the sense, that she kind of, that she kind of blurs the lines between who she actually is and her character. I'm sure she is a nice person. I have no idea. I am not friends with her in real life. Maybe she was a nice person. She's not anymore. I have no idea. It really doesn't matter. But you're just asking me about, is she actually that conceited and stuff like that? Does it paint her in a bad light? I think it does. I feel like there's a time and place for the character stuff. If you're doing the press conference after the AEW pay-per-views, I still wouldn't even do it then. But if you want to do it then whatever. But in these interviews where you're trying to promote the show, I just don't see the point. MJF is constantly in character too. I don't want to just pick and choose oh yeah, Sasha or Mercedes can't do that, but MJF can. I don't know. With MJF's in-character interviews, at least some of the ones he was doing a few years ago, they were fucking funny. They were entertaining. Sasha's, to me, aren't really that entertaining. They're just she just doesn't come across well. Her answers are not always great. And she's got to be careful because, she's a heel, so she's getting heat. But you also don't want to make the company look bad either. So I got to go out of my way to watch the interview that you're talking about. But is she actually that way? I don't know. She gives off that energy that she does. But she could also just be playing a really good character and just doing a really good job of playing that character in her interview. So it's really difficult to say. And if she is, kudos to her. If she's not, and that's actually how she is, and I would not be too shocked by that, then it is what it is. She's still a great talent, so I'm not going to complain about that. But your next question was, I had a blast watching All Out on Saturday. Pretty much every match was either an absolute banger or just an incredibly entertaining bout. But one thing that nobody will shut up about was the plastic bag angle on Bryan Danielson. and the syringe bit in the Hangman Swerve match. Outrage is spread all over the IWC, and I personally just laugh at the sheer hypocrisy and stupidity of these people who actually want to cancel AEW. These are the same people who support a company that watched Triple H commit necrophilia to a corpse. I mixed up your sentences there. Not to AEW. Commit necrophilia to a corpse. Had Kane be in a terrible storyline with Lita about a fake baby. The Rock scrambling Mick Foley's brains with the 15 chair shots. Had Undertaker try to bury people alive multiple times. Had Hulk Hogan commit attempted murder on The Rock by crashing a Mack truck into an ambulance. Suggested John Heidenreich sexually assaulted Michael Cole. Had Trish Stratus bark like a dog. Mick Foley being thrown off a cell twice. Hell in the Cell twice. Multiple uses of fire being displayed throughout its history. Hung Big Boss Man by his neck during his match with Taker. And many other disgusting stuff. And yet they say AEW crossed the line. I get subjectivity, but I feel people are getting way too soft and are easily offended over the littlest things, especially if it's AEW. I get it's a polarizing company, and I get not everyone is into what they do, but I think those people are hypocrites if they give WWE a pass for their past controversies, and are only doing that because WWE is doing blockbuster business for now. Do you think wrestling fans are becoming way too soft? What did you think about those angles? And do you think this whole thing is being blown out of proportion? And is it a modern study on tastes? I think all of what you said, there is truth in pretty much all of that. I mean, if you didn't like it, I honestly don't really blame you. I think both spots were a little extreme. The syringe spot was weird because they didn't really factor into the finish at all. It was disgusting, but it's not like he numbed his lip and he wasn't able to do this because he did that or whatever. It was really just for shock value. Did it bother me? Yeah, but that was the whole point. I mean, they had to do something crazy in that match, and that was pretty out there. It was an unsanctioned match. I get that. That was actually, I wasn't sitting there saying, man, they really shouldn't have done that. There's a lot of shit in AEW that I think to myself, they really shouldn't have done that. Honestly, if anything, what they shouldn't have done was that chair shot thing. I know it was a gimmick chair. I know they've said that. They work with, they work with Chris Nowinski, the concussion expert, former wrestler. They've done it a lot, though. I wouldn't even put the idea out there of doing chair shots to the head, if only for the risk of, kids imitating it, which I know is the whole excuse, that's why, Rollins' curb stomp is banned. I guess it's no better than that. I don't know. I just don't really feel like the chair shots are necessary, but it was a pretty disgusting bump to end that match with, and, it didn't, I wasn't offended by it as much as I probably would have been any other instance, but it was because it was an unsanctioned match, so you kind of have to do stuff like that. The bag angle was totally unnecessary. I'm not really sure what that kind of served. I would not have done that, but I'm not going to sit here and say, fuck AEW, let's cancel them. It is because it's AEW that people will kind of jump on it a lot more than if it was WWE. WWE people would jump on it too. With AEW, WWE people would do the same thing because it's going to be the AEW fans that jump on the WWE fans. So it goes both ways. In 2024, everything is polarizing or divisive or whatever. So, the fact that it was an AEW thing is certainly a factor. Every example that you mentioned, I wasn't a fan of most of that shit. A lot of that was either gimmicked or really not. If AEW did the Hogan Rock thing where they hit him with a car, he's not actually in the car. Bryan Danielson legitimately had a bag over his head. That's a pretty odd visual. That's fucking murder. Yeah, they were murdering people, attempting to murder people in the Attitude Era, but not quite like that. And that was also years ago. They would not, for the most part, probably do that shit today. And a lot of that shit, hopefully, the 15 chair shots to Mick Foley's brain. Yeah, that was gross, but it was also 99, and you would think these people would learn from their mistakes. And they only did one chair shot, and that was gimmicked, and the Mick Foley ones were not. So that's the difference. But yeah, I don't know. I didn't really mind the spots. I'm not going to sit here and say that I loved it. The bag thing especially was very over the top. I'm not really sure why they had to do that. I know it was a nod to Terry Funk. Okay. The unsanctioned stuff didn't bother me because, again, it's an unsanctioned match. You kind of have to do shit like that because that's where the feud is. If someone burned your childhood home down, I would imagine you would probably do something similar, if not just straight up fucking kill the person. But yeah, as far as people becoming too soft, I don't really think that's the case. I think people are just kind of coming around to the idea that some of the shit probably it's just not necessary. AEW can be more edgy than WWE. They don't have to be the personification of edge, though, by doing like fucking bag angles. Like, just because the talent thought it would be a good idea doesn't mean Tony Khan should say yes. And so far, I mean, it hasn't really blown back on them. It did a few years ago with that pizza cutter thing. And WWE trying to sabotage them and shit, I mean, that's a whole other issue. But like the pizza cutter thing honestly probably bothered me more. I don't want to see that shit on mainstream television. If you want to see that, go watch GCW. That fucking shit is just garbage. For like a no-nonsense match, a nothing match on Dynamite, you're doing that shit, that's just fucking gross. If you want to do some of this stuff on pay-per-view, okay. Like, especially in an unsanctioned match. But like the pizza cutter thing, I probably honestly had a bigger issue with that. Because that's like GCW hardcore level crap. Like, oh, look how tough I am. For like a match that you won't remember a week from now. I guess we're still talking about it today, or at least I am. But, you know, the spots they did it all out didn't bother me tremendously. They have to pick their spots. If they only do it once in a great while, then maybe. Especially depending on the situation. When you do it on TV, just do dumb shit like what Darby Allin does sometimes. It's just fucking stupid. WWE, same thing. They could afford to take more risks. AEW just does it way too often to the point where it's like almost channel-changing material. It's like, all right, really? Is that really necessary? Like, I would not have, if I had kids, I would not let them watch the show. And maybe that's their part of their appeal. They want to appeal to the hardcore fans, like the hardcore early 20-year-olds and the, you know, older teenagers and not necessarily kids. But I see a lot of kids at these shows, they want to watch the product because they like the former Dean Ambrose, or they like the Elite or whatever. I mean, I would not bring my kid to a show where they're doing shit like that. Like, that's fucking gross. The syringe thing, okay, just like, whatever. But like some of the other shit that they do, I'm like, okay. Especially with the blood. When it has to do with like legit blood and like cutting people open, that's just a little too extreme. I actually, like I said, I had more of an issue with the pizza cutter thing 3 years ago than what I saw on Saturday. I don't know what that says about me, but what we saw on Saturday was certainly extreme. The Bryan Danielson thing was like, okay, that's really over the top. That I kind of had an issue with, but not enough to like cancel AEW for it. So in that way, you are correct. It is being blown out of proportion. If you don't like it, I wouldn't really watch that part of it. You could say something, but it's not like the death of the company. I wouldn't go that far. Let's see. Their next question. What are some underrated pay-per-views of the past 20 years that you would recommend to a new fan? That's a great question. I wrote down a number of them here from a few different promotions, and not just WWE. From the last 20 years... Vengeance 05 I thought was good, if only for Triple H and Batista inside Hell in the Cell and Shawn and Kurt again. And I think Cena, Jericho, and Christian was also on that show. That was a really good show. So Vengeance 05 doesn't really get talked about a lot. One Night Stand like 05 and 06 are great. 08 was a really, really good show. You had Edge and Taker TLC match main event. I loved the Shawn Batista stretcher match. I thought that match was great. Triple H Orton Last Man Standing was good. Some other matches on the show as well. Really, really enjoyed that show. TLC 2011 and 2016. 2011, you know, everyone talks about Money in the Bank 2011 being a turning point for WWE. But 2011, you had Punk in the main event. No John Cena on the card. It was Punk, Miz, and Del Rio in a TLC main event. That was very good. Bryan winning the World Heavyweight Championship. Zack Ryder winning the United States Championship. Kind of felt like the changing of the guard in a lot of ways. Really fun show. Bound for Glory from TNA. I was trying to think of like an underrated TNA show from the last 10 years. 10, 15 years, whatever. And Bound for Glory 2012 came to mind. Great show. Again, also felt like the culmination of TNA's great year in 2012. Again, my favorite match on that show by far is Bobby Roode and James Storm. Phenomenal match. Street fight. Fantastic match. Probably my favorite TNA match of all time. And if it's not, it's up there. Final Battle 2015 from Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor's had a lot of great under-the-radar pay-per-views in the last decade because people weren't really watching it a lot towards the end. A lot of those shows were great. Final Battle in particular was really, really good. In 2015, also 2016 was good too, but especially 2015. That was AJ Styles' final Ring of Honor match, actually, before he headed to WWE. Him and Jay Lethal in the main event for the Ring of Honor World title. Royal Rumble 2020 was a great show. Doesn't get talked about a lot. I mean, it was like the final major pay-per-view. They had Elimination Chamber too, but like one and maybe Super Showdown. But the final major pay-per-view before COVID, and it was a hot crowd, that amazing men's rumble, and the rest of the card kind of held up as well. It was a good show, and but the men's rumble specifically was amazing. If I had to throw one AEW pay-per-view in there, like a lot of their best pay-per-views are pretty well regarded, but one show that doesn't get talked about a lot, Revolution 2022. All Out 2021 was their best pay-per-view ever. I maintain that. I was there for it. I'm biased, but it's true. Amazing show. That was a phenomenal show. But, Full Gear was also great that year. They had an amazing stretch from All Out to Full Gear to Revolution. Those 3 pay-per-views were outstanding. Revolution, I saw that one in a movie theater too, and it was well worth it. Just a lot of fun. So I would throw that one in there as well from AEW. No L from Facebook. Their first question was, what would be your top 5 NXT TakeOver cards of all time from top to bottom? That's a great question. So if you're talking not like, I don't know if you mean best takeovers period, but you said best takeover cards. So it's hard to say the first Brooklyn show because that show just had a different aura about it. But as a card, it had fucking Ty Dillinger and Apollo Crews on it, which was Apollo's debut, but still it wasn't a banger. And you also had Blake and Murphy versus the Vaudevillains, which at that point was a big deal. 10 years later, not so much, especially considering what happened to both teams, and none of them work there anymore. I think Wesley Blake actually works there as an agent, but that's it. So I don't know if I would go with that. The top 5 cards, I wrote down one, and they're all from different years. TakeOver New York. I was there for that one. Amazing show, April 2019. You had Gargano and Adam Cole in the main event, among a lot of other great matches. TakeOver Brooklyn 3 in August of 2017. That one had Johnny Gargano and Andrade on the show. That one had Adam Cole's debut, Drew and Bobby Roode for the NXT Championship. I think a triple threat tag team match with a tag title. Or not, I don't think it was a triple threat. I think it was just Sanity and Authors of Pain, which was actually quite good. Asuka and Ember Moon and a few other matches. You had TakeOver Portland I would throw in there. People forget about that one. That was the final TakeOver before COVID. Crowd was great. Ciampa and Cole in the main event. Gargano and Finn Balor. I think Riddle and Pete Dunne won the NXT Tag Team titles. A lot of other stuff. Some really, really good stuff on that show. TakeOver New Orleans, which was April of 2018, WrestleMania weekend. Gargano Ciampa. Andrade, Aleister Black, that amazing ladder match to crown an inaugural North American champion. I think they also had Cena and Ember Moon, which was pretty good. And then TakeOver Dallas in 2016. That was American Alpha Revival for the NXT Tag Team titles. Phenomenal match. You had Nakamura, Sami Zayn, phenomenal match. Samoa Joe and Finn Balor, excellent match. Bayley and Asuka, excellent match for the NXT Women's Championship. That was a great show as well. Your next question. Do you see Cora Jade costing Roxanne Perez her NXT Women's Championship on the debut for NXT on the CW? I don't think Cora Jade's ready to come back yet. She could be, and maybe we're all being kept in the dark. I don't know. I haven't heard anything about her being cleared soon, so I'm not sure. Maybe they're just keeping it a secret. Cora Jade would have to turn babyface. I wouldn't turn Roxanne Perez babyface anytime soon. I would not turn Cora Jade babyface either. If anything, honestly, I would help her win, but I don't want Julia to lose the belt or lose that match and whatever. So, you could do Cora Jade costing Roxanne, but what's the point? I feel like they need more heels in that division. I would bring back Cora as a heel. I would have them align, if anything, but you're not going to have Roxanne lose and then have them align because, what's the point of Roxanne's a loser? So maybe after she's done with Julia, I don't know. That could keep her busy. But again, I don't know if Cora's ready to come back anytime soon. At Iwagu91 from Twitter, do you see CM Punk finally getting the chance to headline WrestleMania next year on either nights? I don't. I feel like we're probably going to get Punk and Rollins. I just don't think it's going to be for the championship. I think Gunther's going to walk into Mania as the World Heavyweight Champion. Unless they do Punk and Gunther in the main event on night one, because Cody and... I don't know. I feel like Cody and Rock's going to main event one night, and then the other night's going to be like a Roman match or maybe a women's match. I don't know. I just don't see Punk main eventing. I feel like we're getting Punk and Rollins, but unless the World Heavyweight Championship is on the line, it's probably not going on last, unfortunately. Your next question, your thoughts on Mike Santana's current TNA run after returning to the promotion this year. I've been wanting to ask this for months, but I kept forgetting. It's been great. He's been really coming into his own. I didn't really see much, not that I didn't see much upside, but I didn't really care about Santana leaving AEW and going off on his own. He was good in AEW, but the real worth for me, the real value in Santana was in the tag team with Ortiz. But he's gone out there. I don't really watch his indie stuff, but I've heard great things about his indie work. And in TNA, he's had some good matches. He's been getting over. He's been built up well. He's gotten character development. He has really shined as a single star in TNA. So it's been cool to see. Hopefully at some point he can end up back up on a bigger platform like an NXT or something like that and get a real shot there. That would be cool. But yeah, it's been a good TNA run so far. I assume he'll probably face Moose in a rematch. They had a match recently on Impact. They'll probably have a rematch at Bound for Glory, and hopefully he can win there. Next question, also from at Iwagu91. Considering how personal their feud has become, did you expect Hangman Adam Page and Swerve Strickland to headline All Out this past Saturday before that was indeed the case? I did. I think everyone assumed that was the case. Especially if Danielson and Perry is not a marquee match, and they had actually had a pretty good match, probably one of Perry's better matches, actually, unsurprisingly given who his opponent was. That match should not have been the main event. That had no real storyline build. It wasn't a sexy match. You know, Page and Swerve have been feuding for a year now. Given how personal that feud has become, like you said, that had the main event. It was the craziest match on the card. Putting Danielson and Perry on last, even with the angle that they did, would have been a disappointment. So, they made the right call. That was the worthy main event for that show. That was the most anticipated match on the show going into it, I would say, and it lived up to the hype. At BillMeister88 from Twitter, his first question was, he says, Graham, apologies for missing the last couple of weeks. I've set a calendar reminder up to message you. I appreciate that. He says, first question is AEW on the upturn? All In was fantastic. Dynamite felt more storyline driven. Have they turned a corner? I mean, I hope so. So here's the thing, though. I feel like they're just inconsistent quality-wise. Because their pay-per-views, All In was excellent. All Out ended up being a better show than I was anticipating, and I thought it would be a good show, and their pay-per-views are always great. But like with some of the big moments, and like there were some excellent matches on that show. All Out was fucking awesome. So, but then that happens, and then they turn around, and like the following Dynamite after All In wasn't that great. Dynamite last week wasn't that great. They were good. I mean, the first week after All In was very good. Last week's show was kind of throwaway. For a 2-week build-up for a pay-per-view isn't ideal, obviously. But we'll see what happens tonight. Can they continue the momentum? I feel like that's been AEW's biggest issue now for the at least last year or so, where they have a great pay-per-view, and then they kind of fail to follow it up properly, or they have a couple good Dynamites, and then they can't really keep that streak going. I feel like that's the biggest issue that AEW deals with right now. We'll find out tonight with Dynamite and going forward. I'm not sure. They have Grand Slam, they have Wrestle Dream, they have a lot of stuff on the agenda coming up, so you would think they would be able to keep it going and deliver some, exciting content and shows and stuff like that, but it's more a question of if they can keep it going. So I hope they're on the upturn because the pay-per-view has indicated that they are, but it's all a matter of whether they are able to deliver in the weeks that follow. So we'll see, starting tonight. Your next question. With so much noise about AEW using extreme violence, is this now purely just stupidity from fans of both companies, WWE and AEW, just looking to criticize each other's products? Why can't people just shout professional wrestling for what it is, no matter what company? I mean, I agree. I think a lot of the discourse surrounding what we saw at All In, and we already talked about it earlier, but I feel like a lot of the discourse has to do with the fact that it's AEW. And if it was WWE, a lot of it would have to do with the fact that it's WWE, and AEW fans don't like that they're doing that, and blah, blah, blah. A lot of it does come down to toxic fandom. If people do have an issue with it, that's fine. I mean, I didn't even really overly love those angles either, and the fact that they did them. Did they need them? Would I have been better off without them? Yeah, probably. I really would not have preferred to see that stuff on the show, but I'm not going to sit here ranting and raving about it. And again, you are entitled to your opinion. But when it becomes like WWE versus AEW, and you can kind of tell where the legitimate opinions lie, and then people are just complaining about it for the sake of complaining, for the sake of it being AEW, blah, blah, blah. I mean, you can kind of tell where these complaints are coming from, and then some people just didn't straight up like it, and that's totally fine too. So it really does come to toxic fandom. It does come down to toxic fandom as being a big part of it. Not entirely, but that is a significant factor. And then your third question, your thoughts on Raw moving to 2 hours when it moves to Netflix. Personally, I think, thank the Lord. And he also says, and also, what would you like to see change with the product or added when the move happens? It's so funny that happened on Monday. So it's not going to be 2 hours when it moves to Netflix. It's only going to 2 hours until the move to Netflix. And it's funny that they announced that because that's not what I predicted or wanted or whatever. I mean, it is what I want, but they announced on Monday that the remainder of the run on USA, they're going to be 2 hours long. A couple of weeks ago, someone asked me, it might have been you, Bill, or I don't know who it was. Someone had asked me, what would you like to see happen with Raw on Netflix? Like, choose 5 things that you would like to see change about the show. And the biggest thing that I said, more than anything, was moving it back to 2 hours. I knew that wouldn't happen. It was a pipe dream. I got what I wanted. My prayers were answered, but not in that way, because it's not going to be very likely unless they move to 2 hours, realize how much better it is, and then stick with 2 hours on Netflix. But that's probably not what Netflix signed up for and what they're paying for. They probably are paying for 3 hours of content every Monday and not just 2. But, I had said I wanted 2 hours on Netflix. They're not going to be 2 hours on Netflix. They're not going to be 2 hours on Netflix most likely, but they will be 2 hours until Netflix, which is really funny. So listen, like you said, thank the fucking Lord. I think it's excellent. Less is more. I know it's like less time for the talent. I'll go into a bigger deep dive on it on WrestleRant Radio on Thursday with Mr. Marceau. We'll discuss it in some of the potential cons of them going from 3 to 2 hours, because some people were not happy about it. Believe it or not, there are people that, like I said earlier, that grew up in the PG era and only really know 3-hour Raws and do not know 2-hour Raws. They know 2-hour SmackDowns, but not 2-hour Raws, which is wild to think that there's people like that exist. But it's true, because it's been 3 hours for 12 years. There's people that have grown up on 3-hour Raws. But anyway, I think it's a big positive. I love the idea. Long overdue. Hopefully they see how much better it is in terms of timing of the show. And because you watch Raw on Mondays and it's typically a very good show nowadays, but even then there is some filler and they have to kill time with the fucking video packages. And they were doing that even when it was 2 hours, but it was not remotely as bad. It is absolutely worse with 3 hours compared to 2. I mean, look at SmackDown. SmackDown's a 2-hour show, so you know that it can be filler. But they have a lot less filler compared to Raw. And yeah, matches get more time on Raw, and that's great as well. But some sacrifices need to be made. If the show is going to be 2 hours, that is so much more bearable sitting there on a Monday night watching the show live than a 3-hour show. I know football can be 3 hours. Even that can be boring to me. Nothing should be 3 hours. Even movies, unless it's fucking Endgame, it should not be 3 hours. Raw, especially on a weekly basis, does not need to be and should not be 3 hours. So I am in full favor of the move. I hope it stays like that. I know it won't, but I will enjoy it while it lasts. At Reborn Again, John Ritland from the Twitter Machine and on YouTube. Real Honesty with John Ritland. Great work on Twitter and on YouTube, so check it out. The final 2 questions of the show are from him, first one being, so Tax in an unpleasant place, a cinder block and a needle. Guess Khan doesn't book for the sickos. I guess Khan does book for the sickos, he says. But were any of these spots necessary, even for grudge matches? I mean, the cinder block didn't bother me. The Tax in the unpleasant place, I mean, that was what it was. The needle was the only thing that I would say was kind of over the top, like I said earlier. That and the bag thing. You didn't even mention the bag thing. We already talked about this previously, but yeah, I mean, was it necessary? No, they were going for shock value. I would actually prefer the syringe spot, as odd as that sounds, over the bag thing, because you could have just had Jon Moxley just fucking destroy Danielson without trying to kill the guy. Like, does he hate him that much? I mean, they just started feuding, like he just turned on him. He wants to kill him with a bag? Like, that was a little much. If they had done that in the Swerve match, it would actually make more sense. But Moxley in storyline should be fucking, I mean, I guess people attempt to get away with murder all the time and it doesn't affect them whatsoever. But yeah, some of that stuff was necessary, some of it not so much. It didn't bother me to a great degree, but you can only do that stuff so often. So thankfully, I mean, if they're going to do it on that show, don't do it again for a while. AEW's problem is they try to do that shit way too often. So they got to be careful there. Your last question, non-wrestling related, will you be seeing the Killers game sometime this weekend or soon after? It's good to see Batista continuing to excel in Hollywood, isn't it? A side note, I'm at 214 movies for 2024 so far. That's wild, man. I say that every week, but that's crazy. Will I be seeing the movie in theaters? No, because I actually already watched it a couple of weeks ago. I don't know if I mentioned it here on the show, but sometime either this week or early next week, I talked to him 2 weeks ago, but the interview should be up here on the channel this coming week. That being the Killers game. So I interviewed Drew McIntyre for the Killers game, and I watched the movie quickly. Like, I was at Raw on a Monday. They sent me the link that night. I had to watch it by like 6 p.m. the following day. I couldn't until like fucking 4:30. The movie was like an hour and a half, so I had to cram it in. I got the whole movie in. Unless Alexis wants to see it, and we would go see it again, we will probably see Speak No Evil, which we talked about on Twitter, you and I, a couple days ago, about a week ago. That also comes out this weekend, so I'll probably see that. I already watched Killers game. I thought it was good. It was all right. I don't know if you'll like it, John, but to me, it was like, I don't think you liked either of these movies. or at least this first one. But I felt like it was a mix of Hitman, that Glenn Powell movie, which I know you didn't like. It felt like a mix between that and John Wick 3 specifically. That's what it felt like when I was watching it. Batista's good in it. I've seen him in better movies, but it was a good movie for what it was, and my interview with Drew should be coming out soon. But yeah, Batista's, he's been killing it in Hollywood, getting different roles. It's something different for him to do compared to other stuff that he's done in other roles. And I actually really wanted to interview him for the film, but it just didn't work out. He's still on my interview wish list, so hopefully at some point we can do that. But yeah, go check out the movie this weekend, and more importantly, check out my interview with Drew, coming out hopefully soon here on the channel, if not early next week, in article form and in video form. And I'll probably be seeing Speak No Evil instead this weekend. My interview of that should be up on Letterboxd in the next couple days if we do indeed see it on Thursday night. I appreciate you guys checking out hashtag AskGSM today, episode 563, 563 episodes of me answering questions and just yapping on for almost an hour. That's wild. But thank you guys, as always, for checking out these shows. I greatly appreciate it. If you want to send in a question to the show, you can do so by tweeting me on the Twitter machine at WrestleRant with the hashtag AskGSM. Find me on Facebook as well, facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. Drop a comment on the post I usually put up on Tuesday nights, if not on the wall itself. And last but certainly not least, drop your question down below in the comment section on this very video. I'll include your question in next week's edition. Have an awesome one, folks. I'm Graham GSM Matthews. Enjoy the week, enjoy the weekend, and I'll catch your ass down the road.